The stars looked peaceful from the bridge of the Harmony's edge. Commander Taemin stood at the wide window, watching distant suns shine like tiny diamonds against the black space. His ship was small compared to the war vessels that patrolled the inner systems. But it was perfect for what his crew did best, studying the strange and wonderful things that lived among the stars. "Commander," called his communications officer from across the bridge, "we are getting a signal. It is very weak, but it is definitely artificial." Taemin walked over to the communications station. His people, the Villani, were known throughout the galaxy for their peaceful ways. They had no armies, no weapons of war. Instead, they spent their time learning about other species and sharing knowledge. It was a good life, but it meant they stayed far from dangerous places. "Can you clean up the signal?" Taemin asked. The officer worked at his controls for several minutes. Slowly, the crackling static became clearer. What they heard made everyone on the bridge go silent. It was a voice, speaking in the common galactic language, but this voice was filled with fear and desperation. "This is the Kythera colony world of bright crystal. We are under attack. The Drakmar ships came 3 days ago. They are destroying our cities. They are killing our people. We have no weapons to fight them. We have no ships to escape. Please, if anyone hears this, help us. We are a peaceful people. We have done nothing wrong. They are killing us because we will not leave our world. Please help us." The message repeated over and over. Each time the voice sounded weaker. Taemin felt his heart grow heavy. He knew about the Kythera. They were a gentle species made of living crystal. They built beautiful cities that sang in the wind. They had never hurt anyone. They barely had technology to travel between planets. He also knew about the Drakmar. They were the opposite of peaceful. The Drakmar hegemony was an empire that took what they wanted by force. They conquered worlds and enslaved entire species. If they wanted the Kythera world, it was probably because the planet had valuable minerals under the surface. "How far away is this signal coming from?" Taemin asked. His navigation officer checked the readings. "The Kythera system is at the very edge of known space, Commander. It would take us 8 days to reach them at maximum speed." "And how long would it take a message to reach the Galactic Council?" 12 days to the nearest council station. Then, more time for them to debate and decide what to do. Taemin closed his eyes. By the time the council decided to act, the Kythera would all be dead. The Drakmar did not take prisoners when they wanted a world for themselves. He thought about his own people back home. The Villani Council would not want to risk their ships in a fight. They would say it was sad, but not their responsibility. They would send prayers and sympathy, but no help. But there was one species in the galaxy that might act quickly. One species that had never turned away from a fight when innocent people needed help. "Send a message to Earth," Taemin ordered. "Priority transmission to the human defense fleet." His communications officer looked surprised. "Commander, are you sure? The humans are, well, they are very different from us." Taemin nodded. Everyone in the galaxy knew about humans. They came from a world so dangerous that most species could not believe anything could survive there, let alone become intelligent. Earth had predators that could kill with poison, weather that could freeze or burn, and disasters that could destroy entire continents. The humans who grew up on this deadly world were just as tough as their planet. They were the only species that seemed to enjoy fighting. While others ran from danger, humans ran toward it. The galaxy's peaceful species found them frightening, but they also knew that humans always protected those who could not protect themselves. "The humans will come," Taemin said. "They always come." Several hours later, the message reached the human fleet base at Titan Station. Captain Su-Jin was reviewing patrol reports in her quarters aboard the dreadnought Iron Will when her communications officer called. "Captain, we have an urgent message from a Villani research ship. They are forwarding a distress call from something called the Kythera system." Su-Jin had been in the human defense fleet for 15 years. She had fought pirates, slavers, and worse. She had learned that when peaceful species like the Villani sent urgent messages, it usually meant something terrible was happening. "Put it through to my cabin," she said. Su-Jin listened to the Kythera distress call 3 times. Each time her jaw got tighter. She had read reports about the Drakmar. They were bullies who picked on species that could not fight back. They had been expanding their territory for decades, always choosing targets that were weak and defenseless. She activated her ship's communications and sent a message to Fleet Command. "This is Captain Su-Jin of the Iron Will. Request immediate audience with Admiral Hyun-woo, Priority Alpha." Within minutes, the Admiral's face appeared on her screen. He was a veteran of many battles, with scars on his face and gray in his hair. But his eyes were still sharp and alert. "What do you have for me, Captain?" Su-Jin played the Cathera message. The Admiral listened without expression, but Su-Jin could see his hands slowly form into fists. "How many Drakmar ships?" he asked when the message ended. "Intelligence estimates at least 50 combat vessels, sir. Maybe more." "And the Cathera defenses?" "None, sir. They have no military at all." Admiral Hyun-woo was quiet for a long moment. Su-Jin could almost see him thinking through the tactical situation. The Cathera system was far from human space. It would take a large fleet to fight the Drakmar. It would be expensive and dangerous. But Su-Jin knew what the Admiral would decide. She had served under him for 5 years. She knew that he had grown up on Earth's Korean peninsula, where his ancestors had learned never to back down from bullies. "Send word to all fleet commanders," Admiral Hyun-woo finally said. "Full mobilization. We are going to war." Su-Jin felt her heart begin to beat faster. "Yes, sir. What are our rules of engagement?" The Admiral's expression grew cold as space itself. "The Drakmar want to exterminate an entire species for profit. They will learn that some things are not acceptable in this galaxy." He paused. "No, Quarter Captain. We end this permanently." As the communication ended, Su-Jin began issuing orders to her crew. Throughout human space, similar orders were being sent to every ship, every base, every station. The humans were going to war. And when humans went to war, they did not just fight to win. They fought to send a message that would echo across the entire galaxy. The Drakmar had made a terrible mistake. They had chosen to prey on the innocent while the Deathworlders were watching. Now they would learn what that mistake would cost them. The message spread through human space faster than light itself. On every world, every station, every ship, humans heard the same words: full mobilization. It had been 12 years since the last time such an order was given. Admiral Hyun-woo stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching dozens of ships arrive at the assembly point. The Soul's Vengeance was the largest carrier in the human fleet, big enough to hold 200 fighter craft and still have room for marine battalions. But even this massive ship looked small compared to the fleet that was gathering. Destroyers came first, fast ships built for hunting enemy vessels. Then came the cruisers, heavy with armor and weapons. The dreadnoughts arrived like floating mountains, their hulls bristling with enough firepower to crack planets. Last came the support ships, carriers, supply vessels, mobile shipyards, and hospital ships, sir, reported his tactical officer. We now have 130 combat vessels assembled. More are arriving every hour. Hyun-woo nodded. He had commanded fleets before, but never one this large. The cost of moving so many ships would bankrupt smaller governments. But when Earth's Council voted on the mission, the decision was unanimous. Some things were more important than money. On the fighter deck of the Soul's Vengeance, Lieutenant Do-hyun was briefing his squadron. 24 pilots sat in folding chairs, listening as he explained what they knew about Drakmar tactics. Their fighters are fast and well armed, Do-hyun said, pointing to a holographic display. But they are used to fighting species that give up quickly. They have never fought anyone who hits back hard. One of the younger pilots raised her hand. What about their shields, sir? Good question. Drakmar energy shields can stop most weapons, but they have weaknesses. The shields need time to recharge between hits. If we can coordinate our attacks and hit them fast enough, we can break through. Another pilot asked, how many enemy fighters should we expect? Do-hyun's expression grew serious. Intelligence estimates at least 300, maybe more. He paused, looking at each of his pilots. I will not lie to you. Some of us will not come back from this mission. But we are going because innocent people are dying while we talk. The Kithara have no one else to help them." The pilots nodded. They were all volunteers. Every human in the fleet was a volunteer. When word of the Kithara massacre spread, so many people wanted to join the mission that they had to turn thousands away. In the engineering sections of the fleet, Specialist Ye Jin was working 18-hour shifts to modify the ships for combat. She had been an engineer for 8 years, but she had never seen preparations like these. "Install the ramming spikes on all destroyer-class vessels," she ordered her team. "I want them sharp enough to punch through any armor." Her assistant looked confused. "Ma'am, ramming spikes? Are we planning to ram enemy ships?" "If necessary, yes," Ye Jin replied. She understood his confusion. Most galactic species found the idea of ramming ships together to be insane. But humans had learned long ago that sometimes the most direct approach was the best approach. The modifications being made to the fleet would have shocked the galaxy's other military forces. Nuclear mines that could be dropped like depth charges. Kinetic, kill vehicles that had no explosives at all, just mass and speed. Boarding pods designed to punch through enemy hulls and deliver Marines directly into enemy ships. Most shocking of all were the experimental weapons. Ye Jin's team had been working on these designs for years, but they had never been tested in real combat. Plasma lances that could cut through any material. Gravity bombs that could crush ships from the inside. Viral programs that could take control of enemy computers. "The other species think we are crazy," one engineer said as they installed a plasma lance on a cruiser. Ye Jin smiled grimly. "Let them think that. Fear is a weapon too." On board the assault ship Last Light, Marine Colonel Ki Wu was preparing his shock troops for orbital assault. 3,000 Marines sat in the ship's main briefing hall, their armor gleaming under the bright lights. "Listen carefully," Ki Wu said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "The Drakmar ground forces are used to easy victories. They land on a planet, kill some civilians, and the rest surrender. They have never fought an enemy that wanted to fight back." He activated a holographic display showing Drakmar soldiers. They were large creatures nearly 3 meters tall with natural armor plating and enhanced genetics that made them stronger than most species. "They are bigger than us," Ki Wu continued. "They are stronger than us. Their weapons are more advanced than ours. On paper, they should win every fight." The Marines listened intently. They knew their colonel had never lost a battle in 20 years of service, but they have never fought humans. They do not know that we come from a world where everything tried to kill us every day. They do not know that we learned to fight before we learned to walk. They think strength and size are what matter in a fight. Ki Wu's expression grew cold. "They are wrong. We are going to teach them that the deadliest predator is not the strongest or the biggest. It is the one that never gives up." The Marines responded with a cheer that echoed through the ship. They were ready for war. In his private cabin, Admiral Hyunwoo reviewed the final intelligence reports. The Drakmar had 57 combat ships in the Kithara system. His fleet would have more than twice that number, but the enemy had the advantage of defensive positions and energy shields. The smart tactical choice would be to stay back and use long-range weapons. Wear down the enemy shields slowly and safely. It was what any other species would do, but Hyunwoo had not become an admiral by playing it safe. And this was not just any battle. The galaxy was watching. Every predator species, every slaver, every bully was waiting to see what humans would do. He opened a communication channel to all ships in the fleet. Thousands of faces appeared on screens throughout the armada. Captains, pilots, Marines, engineers, doctors. All of them ready to risk their lives for people they had never met. "People of Earth," Hyunwoo began. "In 6 hours, we will enter the Kithara system. We go to fight an enemy that believes might makes right. We go to face those who think the strong can prey upon the weak without consequence." He paused, looking into the cameras that would carry his words to every ship. "They are about to learn that they are wrong. We are not just fighting for the Kithara. We are fighting for every peaceful species in the galaxy. We are fighting to send a message that will echo through space for generations to come." Hyunwoo's voice grew stronger. "The message is simple. Harm the innocent, and humanity will bring fire. There will be no mercy for those who commit genocide. There will be no quarter for those who prey upon the defenseless. The Admiral's expression grew as hard as steel. Today we remind the galaxy why Earth is called a death world. Today we show them what happens when the children of that world go to war. As the transmission ended, the fleet began its final preparations. Weapons were charged, armor was checked, prayers were said. In a few hours they would face an enemy that had never known defeat. But the Drakmar had never faced humans before. They had never fought a species that saw impossible odds as just another challenge to overcome. The Deathworlder fleet was ready for war. And across the galaxy, those who preyed upon the weak would soon learn what that meant. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kythera system. What they saw made even veteran officers clench their fists in anger. 3 Kythera cities were burning on the planet below. The beautiful crystal spires that had taken centuries to grow were being reduced to ash and rubble. Orbital bombardment platforms hung in space like metal vultures, raining death on helpless civilians. Admiral Hyun Woo stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the destruction. Through long-range scanners, his tactical officer was counting enemy ships. 57 Drakmar vessels confirmed, Admiral. They are in defensive formation around the bombardment platforms. Their flagship is that massive dreadnought in the center. Hyun Woo studied the enemy formation. The Drakmar ships were arranged in a perfect sphere, with overlapping fields of fire and mutual shield support. It was textbook defensive tactics designed to destroy any attacking force before it could reach the bombardment platforms. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving a transmission from the Drakmar flagship. Put it through. The main screen flickered, showing a Drakmar in ornate battle armor. This was Warlord Vexthul, commander of the Hegemony's expansion fleets. He was 3 meters tall with bone spikes protruding from his shoulders and arms. His voice was deep and filled with arrogance. Unknown vessels, you are trespassing in Drakmar territory. This world now belongs to the Hegemony. Leave immediately or be destroyed. Hyunwoo stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. I am Admiral Hyunwoo of the Human Defense Fleet. You are committing genocide against a peaceful species. Surrender now and face trial, or be destroyed. Vexthul looked surprised, then began laughing. The sound was harsh and cruel. Humans, I have heard of your species. You think you are warriors because you survived on a dangerous planet, but you have never faced the might of the Hegemony. The warlord leaned forward, his eyes glowing with confidence. I have 57 warships with energy shields and advanced weapons. You may have more ships, but quantity means nothing against superior technology. I will give you one chance to retreat and preserve your lives. Hyunwoo's expression never changed. The only thing leaving this system will be the Kythera refugees we evacuate. Your ships will burn, your crews will die, and your empire will learn to fear the sound of human names. Vexthul's laughter stopped. Then you have chosen death human. My shields will stop your primitive weapons and my crews will show you what real warriors look like. The transmission ended. Hyunwoo turned to his crew, all of whom were waiting for orders. All ships, he announced over the fleet communication system. This is Admiral Hyunwoo. The enemy thinks their shields make them invincible. They believe their superior technology guarantees victory. They are about to learn why no human has ever lost a war. He paused, looking at the tactical display showing both fleets. Attack formation Omega. All ships. Maximum acceleration directly into the enemy formation. Show them what happens when they threaten the innocent. Throughout the human fleet, alarms began sounding. This was not standard tactics. Normal military doctrine called for long-range engagement, careful maneuvering, gradual weakening of enemy defenses. But humans had never been normal. The entire human fleet turned toward the Drakmar formation and accelerated to maximum speed. 140 ships from massive dreadnoughts to small destroyers charged directly at the enemy like an ancient cavalry charge. Aboard the Drakmar flagship, tactical officers watched in disbelief. Sir, one reported to Warlord Vexthul, the human fleet is charging directly at our formation at maximum velocity. They are making no attempt to avoid our weapons. Vexthul studied the tactical display. Either the humans were insane, or they knew something he did not. All ships open fire. Destroy them before they can reach us. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes filled space between the two fleets. The Drakmar weapons were indeed advanced, cutting through human armor and destroying smaller ships, but the humans kept coming. On the bridge of the Iron Will, Captain Sujin watched her ship take hit after hit. Armor plating was burning away, whole sections were losing atmosphere, but the ship's main systems kept functioning. "Damage report," she called. "Forward armor down to 30%, her tactical officer reported. "We have fires on decks 7 through 12, but weapons and engines are still operational." Sujin nodded. Human ships were built differently than those of other species. Where aliens prioritized comfort and efficiency, humans built for survival. Every critical system had backups. Every corridor had emergency bulkheads. Every crew member was trained to fight fires, seal breaches, and keep fighting no matter what. "Keep us on target," she ordered. "We go through them, not around them." In his fighter, Lieutenant Do-hyun led his squadron through the chaos of the main battle. Drakmar fighters swarmed around the human ships like angry insects, their energy weapons cutting bright lines through the darkness. "Gold Squadron form. Up on me," Do-hyun called over the radio. "We hit their fighter screen, then go for the bombardment platforms." His wingman, Lieutenant Haewon, flew alongside him as they dove into the enemy formation. The Drakmar fighters were fast and well-armed, but they flew in predictable patterns. They had been trained to fight enemies who would run when things got dangerous. Humans did not run. Do-hyun rolled his fighter through a series of maneuvers that would have knocked most species unconscious. His homeworld had 3 times the gravity of most inhabited planets, and humans had evolved to handle extreme G-forces. He locked onto a Drakmar fighter and fired his weapons. The enemy ship exploded, but 3 more immediately moved to attack him. Do-hyun smiled grimly and dove toward them instead of away. "Lieutenant," Haewon called over the radio, "I have 6 fighters on me and my weapons are jammed. I cannot shake them." Do-hyun looked at his tactical display. Haewon was surrounded, her fighter smoking from multiple hits. She would not survive much longer. "I see you, Haewon. Get ready for emergency jump." "Negative, sir. My engines are too damaged, but I can still fly." Do-hyun understood immediately. Haewon was going to ram the enemy ships. It was a tactic that horrified other species, but humans had used it for thousands of years when victory mattered more than survival. "It has been an honor flying with you, Lieutenant," Do-hyun said. "The honor is mine, sir. Tell my family I flew for the innocent." Haewon turned her crippled fighter toward the largest enemy ship she could see, a Drakmar cruiser that was firing on human rescue ships trying to evacuate Kithra civilians. Her fighter was small, but it was moving at nearly 1/10 the speed of light when it hit. The cruiser's shields absorbed most of the impact, but the explosion knocked out their main weapons and left them vulnerable. 2 human destroyers immediately focused fire on the crippled cruiser, destroying it within seconds. On the surface of the planet, Marine Colonel Kai Wu led his shock troops in a desperate fight to reach Kithara survivors. The Drakmar ground forces had superior weapons and armor, but they were unprepared for human tactics. "Squad leaders, remember your training," Kiwu called over the radio as his Marines advanced through the ruins of a crystal city. "The enemy expects us to fight fair. Show them how wrong they are." The Drakmar soldiers were large and strong, but they fought like individuals. Humans fought as a team. When a Drakmar soldier focused on one Marine, 2 others would attack, from different angles. When the enemy took cover behind rubble, humans would go through the rubble instead of around it. Most shocking to the aliens was that humans seemed to get more dangerous when they were wounded. A Marine with a broken arm would switch to fighting with his other hand. A soldier with damaged armor would use speed instead of protection. The battle raged for hours. Human ships pushed deeper into the Drakmar formation, taking terrible casualties, but never stopping. For every human vessel destroyed, they took 2 or 3 enemy ships with them. Slowly, inevitably, the tide began to turn. The Drakmar had superior technology, but technology meant nothing if you could not use it. Their perfect formations were breaking apart under the chaos of human assault tactics. Warlord Vexthul watched his carefully planned defense crumble with growing disbelief. His energy shields were failing under constant bombardment. His fighters were being outmaneuvered by pilots who seemed immune to G-forces that should have killed them. His ground forces were reporting impossible losses to an enemy that fought like wild animals. All ships, he ordered, concentrate fire on the human flagship. If we kill their admiral, they will lose coordination. But even this plan failed. When the human flagship came under intense fire and began to break apart, Admiral Hyunwoo simply transferred his flag to another ship and continued giving orders. For the first time in his military career, Warlord Vexthul began to understand that he might lose this battle. The humans were not just fighting to win. They were fighting with the desperate fury of a species that had spent millions of years struggling to survive on a world that wanted them dead, and that fury was about to consume his entire fleet. The battle had been raging for 6 hours when Warlord Vexthul made his fatal mistake. Half his fleet was destroyed or crippled. His perfect defensive formation was in ruins, and human ships were breaking through his lines at multiple points. In desperation, he activated his ship's communication system and sent a message to the human fleet. "Human Admiral," Vexthul called, his voice no longer filled with arrogance. "I offer you terms of surrender. Withdraw your ships and I will spare the remaining Kithara civilians." Admiral Hyunwoo's response came immediately. "The only terms I offer are unconditional surrender of all Drakmar forces. You will face trial for war crimes." Vexthul's voice turned cold. "Then you force my hand, human. Observe." On screens throughout the human fleet, the aliens watched in horror as Drakmar execution squads began killing Kithara prisoners in full view of their cameras. The crystalline beings' death cries echoed through space as they were shot down without mercy. But Vexthul was not finished. "I have also planted stellar charges throughout this system. If my flagship is destroyed, they will detonate and sterilize every planet. Everyone dies, human. Your choice." The communication ended, leaving the human fleet to absorb what they had just witnessed. In the brief silence that followed, Admiral Hyunwoo's voice cut through the radio channels like a blade. "All ships, this is the Admiral. The enemy has just shown us exactly who they are. They murder prisoners and threaten to commit genocide rather than accept defeat." His voice grew harder. "They have made their last mistake." Throughout the fleet, human crews who had been fighting with professional discipline suddenly found themselves consumed with cold rage. The execution of helpless prisoners was the one crime that no human could forgive. Every person in the fleet had just watched innocent beings murdered for no reason except cruelty. Captain Soo-jin stood on what remained of her ship's bridge, half the consoles destroyed by enemy fire. Her tactical officer was reporting massive damage throughout the vessel, but she was no longer listening to damage reports. "Boarding party to the launch bay," she ordered. "We are taking that flagship." Her officers looked at her with concern. "Captain, the ship is barely holding together. We should fall back and—" "No." Soo-jin's voice was final. "That alien wants to play games with innocent lives. Time to show him what happens when you make humans angry." Within minutes, Soo-jin was leading 200 Marines in armored boarding pods toward the Drakmar flagship. The pods were crude devices, essentially armored boxes with rockets and magnetic grapples. But they were designed for one purpose: getting human soldiers inside enemy ships alive. The Drakmar point defense systems destroyed half the pods before they reached the flagship, but the remaining pods punched through the alien hull like bullets through paper, and suddenly the pride of the Drakmar fleet had hostile boarders in their corridors. The fighting inside the enemy ship was brutal beyond description. The corridors were designed for creatures 3 meters tall, making movement difficult for the shorter humans. But what the humans lacked in size, they made up for in training and fury. Drakmar soldiers had natural armor plating and enhanced strength. In hand-to-hand combat, any one of them should have been able to kill several humans. But the aliens had never fought an enemy that had evolved specifically to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. Human soldiers moved through the ship in small teams, using tactics that had been developed over thousands of years of warfare. They used speed instead of strength, precision instead of power, and teamwork instead of individual heroics. When a Drakmar soldier tried to use his size advantage, 3 humans would attack from different directions. When the aliens tried to use their superior weapons, humans would get too close for those weapons to be effective. When the enemy tried to retreat to defensible positions, humans would find ways to attack from unexpected angles. Captain Su-Jin led her team through the ship's command section, fighting toward the bridge where Warlord Vexthul waited with his personal guard. Each corridor was a battle, each room a small war, but the humans kept advancing. Meanwhile, in space around the flagship, Navigator Chief Wu Jin was coordinating an attack that defied every rule of space combat. Instead of using conventional weapons, he was turning the Cathara system itself into a weapon. All ships with tractor beams target the asteroids in Section 7, he ordered. We are going to play a game of pool with enemy ships as the targets. Wu Jin had spent his entire career studying gravitational mechanics and orbital dynamics. While other navigators calculated safe routes through space, he calculated impossible routes. Now he was using those skills to turn chunks of space rock into guided missiles. The first asteroid struck a Drakmar cruiser at 17 kilometers per second. The alien ship's shields absorbed some of the impact, but the sheer kinetic energy overwhelmed their defenses. The cruiser cracked open like an egg. More asteroids followed, guided by human tractor beams and precise gravitational calculations. The Drakmar fleet, already weakened by hours of combat, began to come apart under this unconventional assault. Impossible, one of Vexthul's tactical officers reported. The humans are using the asteroid field as artillery. How did they calculate those trajectories? Wu Jin smiled grimly from his position on the human command ship. The answer was simple. He had grown up on a world where the slightest miscalculation could mean death from any one of 1,000 different dangers. Humans did not just learn navigation, they learned survival. Back on the Drakmar flagship, Captain Su-Jin finally reached the bridge. The final barrier between her and Warlord Vexthul was a squad of his elite guards. Massive warriors in powered armor with weapons that could cut through tank armor. The guards were confident. They had never lost a fight, and they outnumbered the humans 3-1. They charged forward, expecting to crush these small aliens quickly. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that moved like liquid lightning. Su-Jin and her Marines flowed around the guards' attacks, striking at joints in their armor, using the alien size and weight against them. When a guard tried to grab a human, that human would be gone, replaced by 2 others attacking from different angles. The battle lasted only minutes, but when it ended, all the guards were dead and Captain Su-Jin was standing at the entrance to the bridge. Warlord Vexthul waited inside, alone except for his bridge crew. He was still impressive, 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor, armed with weapons that could kill most species with a single shot. But as Su-Jin walked onto his bridge, Vexthul found himself looking into the eyes of a human who had just fought through 200 of his best soldiers. "Surrender," Su-Jin said simply. Vexthul raised his weapon. "I am warlord of the hegemony. I do not surrender to inferior species." "Then you die," Su-Jin replied and attacked. The fight that followed would later become legend throughout human space. Vexthul was larger, stronger, and better armed. But Su-Jin was faster, smarter, and absolutely furious about what she had witnessed. The warlord fought like a traditional warrior, depending on strength and superior weapons. Su-Jin fought like a human, using every advantage, exploiting every weakness, never giving up no matter how badly she was hurt. When Vexthul tried to use his reach advantage, Su-Jin got inside his guard. When he tried to use his strength, she used his momentum against him. When he tried to retreat, she pressed her attack harder. The end came when Vexthul made the mistake of trying to grab Su-Jin with his bare hands. She slipped his grip, got behind him, and used a combat technique that had been developed in Earth's ancient martial arts academies. Vexthul, for all his size and armor, had the same vulnerable points as any creature with a spine. When it was over, Captain Su-Jin stood over the defeated warlord, breathing hard but victorious. Around the bridge, surviving Drakmar crew members stared in shock at their fallen leader. Disarm the stellar charges, Sujin ordered. Now. The aliens rushed to comply. Within minutes, the threat to the Cathera system was ended. In space around the flagship, the remaining Drakmar ships found themselves surrounded by human vessels. Their shields were down, their weapons were destroyed, and their command structure was broken. Admiral Hyunwoo's voice echoed through space on all frequencies. Attention, Drakmar vessels. Your warlord is defeated. Your fleet is destroyed. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. One by one, the surviving enemy ships lowered what remained of their defenses. The battle was over, but for the human fleet, the real work was just beginning. They had won the fight, but now they had to make sure the galaxy understood what the victory meant. 2 weeks after the battle ended, the Cathera system looked very different. Where once there had been burning cities and orbital bombardment platforms, now there were human medical ships and construction vessels. The work of rebuilding had begun. Dr. Yunsu walked through the ruins of what had been the Cathara capital city. Her medical teams were working around the clock to help survivors, but treating crystalline beings required completely different techniques than anything in human medicine. "Doctor," called one of her medics, "we have another group of survivors in Sector 12. They are badly damaged but still alive." Yunsu nodded and gathered her equipment. She had been working for 14 days straight, learning how to heal people made of living crystal. It was exhausting work, but every life they saved made it worthwhile. The Kithra survivor she found was barely conscious, his crystal body cracked and dim. Through a translator, she could hear his weak voice asking the same question that all the survivors asked. "Why did you come?" "We had nothing to offer you." Yunsu knelt beside the injured Kithara and began applying the healing techniques she had developed. "Because it was right," she said simply. "Because no one should die alone, while others have the power to help." The Cathara's crystal body began to glow brighter as her treatment took effect. Like all his people, he could not understand why an alien species would risk so much for strangers. But he was grateful beyond words. Similar scenes were playing out across the planet. Human engineers worked alongside Cathara craftsmen to rebuild the crystal cities. Human teachers shared knowledge while learning about crystalline culture. Human soldiers stood guard while the peaceful aliens began to heal from their trauma. On the flagship Soul's Vengeance, Admiral Hyun-woo was dealing with a different kind of aftermath. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy as news of the battle spread. The reaction was unlike anything in galactic history. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we have received formal surrender from 3 Drakmar colony worlds. They are requesting immediate protection from human forces." Hyun-woo raised an eyebrow. "They want us to protect them from their own people?" "Yes, sir. Apparently word of the battle has caused widespread rebellion throughout the hegemony. Slave species are rising up, and even some Drakmar colonies are declaring independence." The admiral studied the reports on his screen. The Drakmar hegemony, which had seemed invincible just weeks ago, was falling apart. Fear of human retaliation was causing panic throughout their territory. But it was not just the Drakmar who were reacting to the news. "Additional report, sir," the communications officer continued. "The Vorthon Syndicate has canceled all slave raids in human-adjacent sectors. The Bloodscale Armada has redirected their expansion fleets away from any system with human trade. Trots, and the Galactic Council has requested an emergency session to discuss new diplomatic relations with Earth." Hyun-woo allowed himself a small smile. This was exactly what he had hoped for. The victory at Cathara was not just about saving one species. It was about sending a message to every predator in the galaxy. That message was simple: harm the innocent, and humanity will bring fire. On the bridge of the Iron Will, Captain Sujin was reviewing casualty reports from the battle. The human fleet had lost 37 ships and over 8,000 crew members. It was a terrible price, but Sujin knew that those people had died for something important. Her thoughts were interrupted by an urgent message from Earth Command. When she opened it, she found herself looking at the face of Earth's president. "Captain Sujin, Admiral Hyun-woo, And all members of the Cathara Relief Force, the president began. The people of Earth are proud of what you have accomplished. You have shown the galaxy that humanity will not stand by while innocents suffer. The message continued with official congratulations and promises of support for the ongoing relief efforts. But the most important part came at the end. Let it be known throughout the galaxy that Earth's protection extends to all peaceful species. Any who threaten the innocent will face the full might of human forces. This is not a threat. It is a promise. The message was broadcast on all galactic communication networks. Within hours, every government, every military force, every pirate band in known space had heard it. The reactions were immediate and dramatic. The Galactic Council, which had ignored human requests for membership for decades, suddenly began sending urgent invitations for Earth to join as a full voting member. Trading cartels that had previously avoided human space began offering exclusive contracts and favorable terms. Peaceful species that had lived in fear of their aggressive neighbors began sending messages of gratitude and requests for protection. But perhaps most importantly, the predator species began to change their behavior. Slave raids decreased dramatically. Aggressive expansion slowed. Species that had terrorized others for centuries suddenly found themselves looking over their shoulders, wondering if their actions might attract human attention. In the months that followed, the effects continued to spread. The phrase Deathworlder fleet became known in every language in the galaxy. Some species spoke it with fear, others with hope, but everyone knew what it meant. It meant that the children of Earth were watching, and they would not tolerate cruelty toward the innocent. 6 months after the battle, Tae-min of the Villani Research ship Harmony's Edge visited the rebuilt Cathara capital. The Crystal City was more beautiful than ever, its spires singing in harmony with the wind. He met with Admiral Hyun-woo, who had remained in the system to oversee the reconstruction efforts. "I wanted to thank you," Tae-min said. "When I sent that message to your people, I hoped you would come, but I never imagined you would do so much." Hyun-woo looked out at the Crystal City, where human and Cathara children were playing together in the streets. "We did what anyone should do when faced with innocent people in danger. But you risked so much," Tae-min insisted. "Your people, your ships, your resources. The Cathara had nothing to offer in return." The Admiral smiled. "Commander, my people learned long ago that the most important battles are not fought for profit or territory. They are fought for principle. The principle that the strong should protect the weak, not prey upon them." Tae-min nodded slowly. Like many peaceful species, he was beginning to understand why humans had become so feared and respected throughout the galaxy. It was not just their military power, it was their willingness to use that power for others. As news of human intervention spread, other species began to reconsider their own actions. The galaxy was slowly becoming a safer place, not because humans conquered it, but because they made it clear that evil actions would have consequences. 1 year after the battle, Captain Soo-jin stood on the observation deck of the Iron Will, watching human patrol ships move through space near Earth. The ship had been fully repaired and was ready for new missions. Her contemplation was interrupted by an urgent message from Fleet Command. When she opened it, she saw Admiral Hyun-woo's face on the screen. "Captain, we have received multiple distress calls from the Aldorian sector. Pirates are attacking refugee convoys. How soon can your ship be ready for deployment?" Soo-jin looked out at the stars, thinking of all the innocent people who might be suffering while she stood safely on her ship. The choice was easy. "We can. Be ready in 6 hours, sir." "Good. And Captain?" "The pirates have heard about Cathara. They know what happened to the Drakmar, but they think we will not travel so far for a few refugee ships." Soo-jin's expression grew cold. "Then they are about to learn how wrong they are." As the Iron Will prepared for another mission, similar scenes played out throughout human space. Wherever innocent people called for help, human ships responded, not for profit, not for territory, but because it was right. The galaxy was learning that when humans made a promise, they kept it. The promise was simple but absolute: harm the innocent, and the Deathworlder fleet will bring fire. And across the stars, Those who preyed upon the weak began to understand that the age of easy victims was over. Humanity was watching, and humanity would not look away. The children of Earth had taken their place as the galaxy's guardians, and they would never again allow genocide to go unpunished. The message had been delivered, the galaxy had received it, and the universe was a safer place because of it.